A police officer sits in his car listening to the radio on a dull evening in a small town. On the edge of a wooded area, a man stumbles from the darkness and slowly crawls on his hands and knees. The officer approaches the man and finds him near death and bloodied. The police officer rushes him to a hospital for safety and care, a place for sanctuary. But this sanctuary may not be for salvation. This sanctuary may be the den of a hellish cult seeking redemption from the beyond. A group of white-hooded individuals surrounding the hospital with an upside-down triangle on their face brandishing knives. With no way out, the trapped individuals must confront the cosmic murderous nightmare lurking in the shadows of this hospital. This is It Records. Hello everybody, I'm one of your co-hosts of the podcast It Records, and I'm joined as always with my lovely co-hosts Peter and Lindsay.
Hello, everyone.
Lindsay, you sound so thrilled.
You know it.
We have a gun to your head. We're making you co-host against your will.
Yeah, we got to get this thing recorded tonight. But I called you guys my co-host this time. I really caught myself instead of introducing you as guests to the podcast, which you are not.
Hey, you know.
We started this together, Matt. Don't you forget.
I know. My introductions, though, slowly started to turn into, like, it's in my show, and you guys just happened to drop in. But I'm working on it.
It's because you take the lead. It's a lot of power.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
in that.
But you know,
I feel
you
like I'm
handle it
like...
well.
Oh, thank you. It feels like my monologue for, like, a late-night show, and then I'm bringing you on. But it's not that. Anywho, this week, everybody, we watched the 2016 film The Void, written and directed by Jeremy Gillespie and Steven Konstanski, I believe it's pronounced. Supernatural cosmic horror. Came out independent film, and if you haven't heard of it, this is the basic synopsis of the film. A police officer, Carter, discovers a blood-soaked man limping down a deserted road. He rushes to a local hospital with a bare-bones night shift staff. There's only a few people in this hospital because they're moving to a different one. Cloaked cult-like figures surround the building. The patients and staff inside start to turn ravenously insane. Trying to protect the survivors, Carter, the police officer, leads them into the depths of the hospital where they'll discover a gateway to immense evil. And, if that's not enough, I'm going to throw you the trailer right now so you can get a glimpse into the void.
Haven't you ever wished to save someone? Beyond saving? No matter what the cost? This is uncharted territory. The body has to adjust, of course. We weren't built for this kind of thing. You'd be surprised at the things you find when you go looking.
There is something calling them all here.
What if those people get in here? What are we supposed to do?
You saw it? What was that?
Do you know where you go when you die? I do.
Alright, so there's your trailer. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope my synopsis, well, you couldn't see the picture, but I hope what you heard was similar to what I told you.
We definitely watched it at the same time.
Oh, but I'm just saying our listeners did not see what we saw.
No, I
They're
got you.
taking it for granted that whatever I said is what was on the pictures, the moving images. But with The Void, we can get into the plot a little bit. Pretty recent movie, 2016. But I'll talk a little bit later. I want to talk about the horror relevance. I used to do that quite a bit on the show. And it's a subgenre I thought was like body horror. It reminded me of a really 80s body horror type movie watching this, and I'll go into a little more of that significance. But Pete, speaking of that, I thought this movie would have stuck out to you quite a bit, being the '80s fan you are? It's your favorite decade.
Well, before we get into that, I forgot about the horror elephants. We haven't done that in a really long time.
No.
Was it Cloverfield? Is the last time? You better switch that phone off. Turn that
Sorry.
little silence thing on. If you have an iPhone, I don't even remember. If
I
you
do have an iPhone, and it's right over by the computer. It's been moved.
You better hit that little switch. Anyways.
Thank you kindly.
You were talking about horror elements.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Oh, I was just saying that we haven't done it in a while. I want to say the last time we did it was actually Cloverfield.
Yeah. It's been a while since we specifically pointed it out what this movie was, its relevance in horror. We've probably touched upon it.
It definitely has a lot. Yeah, it definitely is like the most referenced horror film I've seen in a while. Like that, like you could see like really like what inspired it. I feel like these two guys that directed it. I think they're two guys.
It is, yeah. They're two guys.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeremy Gillespie and Stephen Kostansky.
Okay. I thought, like, when I was watching, I was like, oh, they're taking it from this movie, they're taking it from that movie. I really saw a lot of influence from The Thing, obviously. I saw Event Horizon in there. And then I thought I saw, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but Assault on Precinct 13, the John Carpenter one.
Yeah.
I haven't.
At least, like, the core, because, like, that movie is, like, about a police officer who's going to an understaffed police station that's because they're moving to a different precinct because that one's closing down. So it's basically, like, the same bare bones as, oh, we're in a hospital now.
Okay.
Like,
Same
and then, like,
scene.
and then, like, the villains were supernatural, like, which so is the gang of the original in that movie. They're kind of supernatural with the way they move and attack. I kind of got that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And Event Horizon came more in at the end, where I could talk about that later.
Sure. But I saw several references, and some that you mentioned did with John Carpenter and The Thing. I think that's a pretty relevant. I mean, when people die in this film, something happens to their body where they become these creature type things. I got some vibes with George Romero, especially with the dynamic of the characters. You say Event Horizon, I see Hellraiser.
I've seen that compared. I think they're both. I mean, both Clive Barker was involved.
Oh, absolutely. And when I watched Event Horizon, I said, I see Hellraiser in this movie. So they're very in that same vein of 80s type of, like, body horror films. Oh, Event Horizon was the 90s.
Yeah.
But...
I think with the way that this movie kind of, like, progressed, it kind of reminded me of how the ending for Event Horizon was, where it was just, like, mysterious, I guess, is what I would say right now, is that we're not entirely sure, like, what's going on near the end.
Well, I would say for most of the film, you kind of have that mysterious, I don't know, otherworldly, really vague understanding of what's going on with these there's like about maybe like eight people in this hospital.
Absolutely.
And somebody dies with scissors being stabbed in their eyes, and
One of my notes.
What's that?
What the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
like I was writing it, and I was just like, it's like the fourth note. I think it's like 30 minutes into it. I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now?
Oh, I completely 100% agree. I was so confused.
I started off with watching Night of the Living Dead, of course, like the guy in the hospital, and then I said the Assault on Precinct thing, and then I was like, oh, what the fuck is happening right now? And then I moved on. I'm like, so the murderers in the beginning are good guys? Because you remember how it opened up is that these two, like an older man and a younger man, who you think are related, are related. I don't know. They like. It looks like they just brutally murdered like a family because they're coming in a house. This guy comes running, who Matt said in the intro. That's the guy that the police officer finds, and he gets away from them. So it seems like these are the bad guys. And then as the plot thickens, they don't seem so bad, which is weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what to think of these couple of characters throughout. I was getting some bad vibes, but
Especially the father. The father is just kind of like a... I mean, yeah, he had a troubled past because it's slowly revealed that he had a loss in his family. But even then, it's just like, you don't seem like a good person.
yeah, 100%.
He seems really aggressive, yeah.
Yeah.
But they do allude to, I mean, that's how the movie starts, and these people running out of the house, and we might think these people are bad because they basically shoot this person and burn their body, but they turn out to be on the side of the protagonists in the hospital because these weird other earthly, other dimensional creatures begin to all attack these characters. I think what it's supposed to be like showcasing, I don't know, it's a very vague film, is like we're seeing the microcosm of this hospital, of these people being attacked, but it's happening all over this town. Like, and it's been happening. All the opening shots before they're in the hospital, there's nobody. It's like deserted. There's a vacancy sign at this hotel. And the father says when they're in the hospital to all of them, he goes, you don't want this to happen again, do you? And the son shows that like throat cut that he has. So apparently this has been going on for a while. Like they've seen some shit that might have been happening in this town or throughout the country or
The town over.
yeah.
Okay.
And we're getting the glimpse through the cop's eyes of, oh shit, this is happening in the hospital, but it could have been going on this whole time.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll get into this a little bit later, but I thought, even though it's like, it's sometimes good not to have everything explained to you, this is where I'm like, okay, I could use a little more explaining right now, because you're just throwing shit at me, and you're waiting for something to stick, because they're just, I feel like they just crammed a bunch of shit together into a movie from these other movies that they liked, and just combined them all into this mishmash of everything. And they're like, whatever works is happening.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one who was feeling that way, because I felt like I was just, like, not following, like I should have been following. I was just like, what the fuck's going on?
I found it very hard to follow. Like, there are some movies that, of course, I love that just don't make any fucking sense. I will admit that. But I would say that a good portion of them at least try and establish some kind of rule set, or just like, you know what, this movie's fucking nuts, don't take us too seriously. At least there's like that kind of thing. This movie is taking itself a little more seriously, not really giving you a whole lot to follow. You're just like supposed to be like really confused until it slowly be revealed, but then you're like, I still don't really know what's going on.
Totally.
Yeah, I think that's the general reaction I've heard from like reading reviews and what we're saying. It's okay for a movie to be vague, and this one tries to. Like, there's those dream sequences that the cop sees of like these like really cloudy landscapes of, I don't know what he's seen, and there's sort of like some reality shifting where like there wasn't supposed to be a basement to this hospital. Like the blueprint said there wasn't, but the guys went down to this basement area.
In
So
a
like
sub-basement.
in a sub-basement, yeah. So there's like some sort of reality shifting that's going on in the film, which is fine, but just even the plot itself, like explaining that to us, or like coming to some cohesive end, I was confused. I wanted just to... And they had that one scene where Dr. Powell, who's, we can get into a little later without spoiling, anyway, what did he say? Oh, I lost my train of thought because I didn't want to spoil Dr. Powell's character. Damn it.
Just spoil
Yeah,
it.
we
Maybe
can just
it'll
go
come
ahead
back
and
to you.
spoil it anyway, like every other time.
I don't know if it will now. Yes, it did. Okay, Dr. Powell is one of the 8 people, and he dies. He gets killed, but he comes back from the dead as some sort of weird creature. Spoiler alert. And he has this exposition scene, like a long exposition scene where Alice is like on that operating table, which is I'm not sure Carter, our main character, police officer's wife, ex-wife. They had a baby.
It seems like they're separated.
Yeah.
I got.
Yes, after
Okay.
the loss of their child.
Right. That's pretty significant. The loss of the child between them, that's a major point between them and the film. But she's on this operating table, and he's given this exposition of, like, why he's doing this and what they're seeing. But not in its entirety. It was really directed towards Powell's character of he lost his daughter as well, and he wants to bring her back in any way possible. And that's where the void comes in. This sort of interdimensional space where there's no real distinction between living and dead, is what I got.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Powell turns out to be like the surprise cult leader, is right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Big time. Yeah.
Yeah, that was freaky.
And yeah, I don't even know what he looks like. It's almost like almost like a reptile or something fully scaled. But there's also these several other creatures that we see throughout the film that after somebody dies, they come back to life as like a thing type creature. And most of those were all actual like prosthetics, animatronics, makeup, which I thought was an interesting aspect of this film, that it was barely any digital CGI type work.
Yeah, I would give them props for that. That looked great. They did a really good job with that. And it seems like that's what they were focused on, other than telling a cohesive story.
Mm-hmm.
That could very well be.
Yeah, that seemed to be the number one priority. I felt like was make this look cool. These guys' backgrounds. They've only directed like 2 or 3 films. It's like Father's Day, which is another like cheeky horror film. I think Manborg, something like that. But what they're known for...
they did Manborg?
Yeah, these guys wrote and directed Manborg. But what they're really known for in like the industry, it's like creative guys. It's either makeup or like CGI stuff. They've worked on like Suicide Squad and Pacific Rim, and some major blockbuster type action movies. And those are 2 off the top of my head. So I think they were like, how about we make a movie that we really want to do, like with practical effects, and go all out. That's really their bread and butter. But they wrote and directed it as well. Mm-hmm. Which I actually have a quick little clip if people want to listen in. It's called The Nightmare, or Nightmare in the Making. And it's just a little clip from the making of The Void and what it took to make some of these crazy creatures, hellish creatures from this other dimension, as well as some of the sets, because the set took place on an old abandoned high school. And they had to transform it into this hospital / cult den. So, yeah, listen in.
Beautiful thing about practical effects is that they look great. They work best, in my opinion, like above CG, whatever. They look great on camera, but when you're on such a tight timeline, they need to work the first time through, and that's not how practical effects work. It's like a process of kind of like getting it there.
And we didn't have any time. Basically, you had to show up on set with a thing, which due to necessity and due to budget had to be built to be modular and serve multiple purposes, which just means there's multiple things that can go wrong on it. Thankfully, a lot of these things worked. A lot of them didn't. That's just the nature of these kinds of effects. Thankfully, we were able to do inserts after the fact to kind of fill out some of the sequences.
The special effects team is bananas talented. You don't really have to do anything but react to what you're seeing. It's not hard to feel terrified.
And we're back. All right. So we've talked a little bit about, the makeup and like the prosthetics they did with it. But we haven't really gotten into themes, or really too much of the references to these guys, what inspired them. So did you guys have any opinions on those influences?
Yeah, this movie has a lot of Lovecraftian elements, definitely, 100%. And the ones that I was able to pick up on, there's definitely a lot of unanswered questions. Especially toward the end, I kind of felt like like, oh shit, like, what's gonna happen now? And obviously, that's kind of left up to interpretation. So that was pretty spooky. And then I think that there's a lot of, especially what comes to mind is when Allison is kind of locked away with Dr. Powell, and she's kind of on that table and not able to escape. There's a lot of helplessness and hopelessness, which is another theme present in Lovecraftian kind of horror. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of sci-fi and, mystical, obviously horror elements in this movie, and those are the two things that really stood out to me. If you guys can think of anything else or, that comes to mind.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, those Lovecraftian themes, because I was reading how they came up with like wanting to make this film, was they were working on, I hope it was Suicide Squad, but it was some movie where Guillermo del Toro was making one of his movies, and he was making like a Lovecraftian like adaptation of some sort, and they were able to sit in on the set and check it out and read over the script, and they were like, oh, I have an idea for this movie. So heavy influences like from the get-go on Lovecraftian type storytelling.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. One thing I wanted to talk about I mentioned the relevance of the horror genre to this movie, and I mean it's a cosmic horror, supernatural type horror, but like the heart of it is it's a body horror film. If anything else, really reminds me of like an 80s body horror. These kids probably grew up. The guys who directed this movie probably grew up on that stuff, and like wanted to make a movie.
Those little Rugrats.
Oh, those kids making the scary movies. But
with their camcorder.
Yeah, and the makeup and the fake blood. Anywho, I just was looking into body horror and the background of it, and there's really three main elements that make a body horror film. And you have like the invasion body horror, by like disease or contagion. You have violation by mutilation, sort of body horror, and then you have transformation, like basically through biological metamorphosis. And I could explain more of those are kind of self-explanatory, but I thought this film kind of fell within the last one, the transformation, which is like very Lovecraftian. It's the body horror is coming from the body transforming into something completely different, some sort of alien being, dimensional being. That's what's freaky about the body horror films. It's like this sacred tomb, this rubbery flesh that we hold so I don't know, with high praise, and these movies like really get to the core of like ripping apart the body. But I don't think it's invasion. Could be, I guess, what the void is, but it's not really a disease that creates the body horror. Invasion of the Body Snatchers is like one of the first ones that comes to mind with invasion. And then
I can't really think of another one even before that.
Yeah.
Because that was 50s.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's got to be several, but even any sort of like zombie, like 28 Days Later isn't really. It has some gore to it, but it's got the contagion element to it. Is what has the body horror, and then violation by mutilation. I think of Alien, as being a more prominent one, with them, impregnating, putting their eggs in people by shooting, basically a mini head into the person, and then bursting forth through them when they're born. But yeah, that's just a background into body horror and the three main stages, and this one's really in the transformative metamorphosis stage, especially with Dr. Powell.
Yeah.
I mean, he's completely goes from human to like God, essentially. Or he says, sorry, the void is beyond gods and beyond time, so he's way beyond that. Mm-hmm.
We haven't really talked about characters at all in this movie, in this podcast.
I didn't know any of their names at all, so I've been avoiding that.
My thoughts as well.
Yeah. You got the doctor. You got the police officer. The police officer's wife, who's a nurse.
Yeah.
Then you got the nurse in training,
Mm-hmm.
who's like, I didn't want to fucking be here. And you're like, the other girl's like, shut up, bitch, you're here.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Deal with it. Then you got the pregnant teenager.
Who
Yeah.
ends
Who-
up, you know.
Spoiler alert, is the doctor's child
Yeah.
through surgery.
Super
I don't
messed
know.
Yeah.
Which came out of fucking nowhere,
Mhm.
really. It's just like, yes, that is my child with him. I'm like, what? You're being real weird out of nowhere. Like, you're fine for the first 70
yeah,
minutes
third
of
act,
this
like
movie.
different Maggie. Maggie is her name, right?
That sounds
Okay,
right.
I know her name then.
Sure.
Yeah. I think Allison is the cop's wife.
Yes.
His,
Yeah, that
his
sounds
name's
right.
Carter. But what did you think of the characters? You brought that up, Pete. Did you think they were fully fleshed out? Did you care for any of the characters? Like,
No, I didn't care.
Like when they were mutilated? Yeah, okay.
I mean, I think probably, like, they killed off, like, I thought the doctor was, like, oh, he's, like, the most interesting, because, like, he, like, in the beginning, he was, like, the voice of reason, at least it kind of seems like, and he, like, had the most control of the situation, because he's saving people's lives, and then he gets killed right away by the junkie or whatever, then he comes back, and he's like, oh, I'm the bad guy, and I'm like, what? And then all his, like, and then he becomes, like, a very stereotypical bad guy. That's just really cult obsessed.
Yeah.
Like, that cult was weird.
Well, he is the leader of that cult, to the void.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
I didn't get the triangle. Do you guys get that at
No,
all?
that was freaky though. I mean, it's just like
no,
the cult
but-
symbol, right? Or am I wrong?
Yeah. Triangles have many different meanings. I'm not sure what this one. Just like, I guess it was mainly the gateway, right? I mean, well, there was the gateway into the other dimension was the shape of a triangle, and then spoiler, in the other dimension, there's a huge pyramid type statue. So some relevance to them is the other dimension is a pyramid shape.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
So, I got something to say.
Sure.
These guys, like you said, their bread and butter is special effects, and it really shows because they're really good at that. But the fucking story really lacks because the three of us had no idea what was going on. And we've seen some movies that don't make a lot, like Dead Heat didn't make a lot of sense, but we were able to follow it a little bit better than this movie, I would say. Like, that movie's crazy. It's about fucking two masculine dudes that become zombies
Yeah.
that are trying to live for longer than 24 hours.
Yeah. But at least they had a cohesive plot, a storyline that you knew what their goals were, their objectives, what they're going for. This one I wasn't
none
so
of that
sure.
is in the void.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's pretty lacking.
It's just
in all
like
of those things.
It's like he's mad because she lost his child, their child. The doctor's mad because he lost his child. The mean father's mad because he lost a child and his other child didn't protect them and lost his voice.
We got stabbed in the throat.
Yeah. Protecting them. So,
Yeah.
and he's a fucking kid, so maybe cut him some slack because he can't talk anymore.
Yeah.
Do you think him and the nurse that usually probably would have died in other movies, like the nurse in training, do you think that they like became a couple and are just like, and like they're like continuously running into this cult no matter what town they go into?
You know, there's a very strong possibility for that. They set it up that way, did they not?
It almost seemed like there's no escaping it. Is kind of what it seems like, because especially with the father and the son, they like And then the Holy Spirit, never mind.
Jesus. Oh man. Yeah, I mean, they kind of did set it up that there could have been a sequel. I've heard that they're not going to. That's not the plan.
That's
fine.
Good news.
But yeah, there's two different. There's several characters or angles they could use to be a sequel, but they're not pursuing it.
Respect.
For the better, because it just if they explained more, if they just didn't have enough footing for it to like run away with a sequel. Like it just like there was just too many mysterious things about the movie that just like I don't even know what I would expect from a sequel or want from a sequel, because there's just too many things that you're throwing at me, and I don't even know what I want to answer.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think they'd fall down the trap of, we said there was a Hellraiser vibe, or I did, you said Event Horizon. But I think they'd fall down the same path that Hellraiser did. They get progressively worse if you continue the series in Hellraiser, even though I'm a fan. Like, objectively, they're not that great after the first one. But it would be the same thing. I mean, Hellraiser contained it, the first one, to like that house where the guy comes back from, the hell from Pinhead. But the second one takes them to where the Cenobites like live in their little box. And that's what this one would do. It'd take them into the void, I feel like, if you wanted to continue it. And it just doesn't pan out. It just becomes like, how crazy can we make this look? And how gory can we make it? And it loses a lot of story, which this first one didn't really have. Which Hellraiser did have a better first story.
Yeah.
And speaking of Hellraiser 2, there was an homage to it. There's a scene in Hellraiser where she's running in a hospital, actually, like through a maze out of where the Cenobites are, and a creature's following her, and the walls are closing in. There's a similar scene exactly in this one where the kid is running out, and the new fetus monster is following after him.
Interesting.
Oh yeah,
And the walls
you didn't
close
say
in.
anything about that.
Yeah, if you didn't think there was a fetus monster in this movie, there is. So, stay tuned for that.
Yeah, this movie is really gross. It's just really violent and unnecessarily like gory.
Nothing will ever top Dead Alive for me, so this was like tame after I saw that.
Yeah, that's fair, but like I've seen that movie.
I had no idea what was
this.
happening to me.
I feel like at least with I would argue for at least Dead Alive, he did it for comedic
That's
value.
true. It's completely
in a dark humor kind of way. And then this one is just like, the Thing was really gory and cool. Let's do that because we're really big fans of that movie.
fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. But then, Pete, what did you think of the one scene where they're down in the basement and there's like a room full of botched experiments from Dr. Powell? That, like,
oh yeah.
Where they all come back to life and like,
yeah,
that red lighting. It's like all blood and like contorted bodies.
I mean, it probably was like the most like, some of it was pretty fucking gross, but like the most impressive part of the movie, for me, this amount of, they put a lot of work into that scene for sure and did a really good job. And I give them props for everything they did with the prosthetics and the makeup and all that is really good. But it's just like, without any story whatsoever to hold it together, this movie really falls apart.
Yeah.
For me, honestly, like I know how you said like in the beginning, it like I thought about you. Because it reminds you of the 80s movie so much, I was just like, well, to be honest, I wasn't too crazy about this movie because there just wasn't anything for me to hold on to besides the special effects, which is like, sometimes I need a little more than that. The movie presented itself as a real philosophical question, and that's all it was, is just like, it is a question, there's no answers, and that's about it.
So are you destroying it?
Yes, I am destroying it.
Oh, okay. Pete destroys. All right. Does it sweeten the deal? This was a Kickstarter crowdfunded movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good for them, and I hope, like, I don't destroy their careers, but
They'll be fine.
yeah, they'll be fine. I just, this is a stepping stone for them. Hopefully they are able to fine tune their later works and maybe like have some other people look at their drafts and it's like what they need.
Sure.
Yeah, because I think they're great, like artists, like creative people. That's what they're bread and butter. And I thought directorially it was fine, and, like the shots and the way the lighting and the filming was. Maybe their writing just needs a punch up. But I said it was crowdfunded. I think it was like 80,000 is what they got.
That sounds right.
To the crowdfunding. And I know in the box office they did like 100,000 or something, so they made it back. They made a profit. Not huge, but it's a positive profit margin. We got a Pete Destroy over here, so that's one of us.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. I guess I'll go. I'll give it. No, I'm gonna echo a lot of things Pete said. I thought directorially they did fine. These two guys for this like their third movie I think they've done. I love when people don't use digital effects for everything, and they did a lot of the prosthetics and the animatronics and all that was like real, and they did all the sets like from this old high school. So it was a really creative endeavor, and I thought it looked really cool. What kills it for me though is I couldn't really connect to the story. I didn't know like what it really was, so I couldn't relate to the characters, or like when they died or were mutilated, I didn't really have that strong of an emotional connection. So I was left kind of confused. Maybe they were going for that, but it just didn't do it for me. So it kind of left me wanting to watch movies that they were emulating. It kind of left me wanting to go, well, I want to go watch The Thing, or I want to go binge watch Hellraisers again.
Still can't believe you did that, by the way.
I'll do it again, gladly.
You watched all 10 Hellraisers where I didn't watch a single Child's Play movie when we did that. I just did it all from memory, and you just, I'm going to watch all 10.
I believe it's 11 Hellraisers, but, I mean, who's counting? Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure. I know it's not great, but I love them. But I didn't love this one, so I'm destroying it.
Well, I mean, with that being said, the good things about this movie for me, I think, were I thought the acting was pretty convincing. I thought the Lovecraftian elements we kind of talked about earlier were spooky. And I thought it was a pretty, scary movie, However, I think it's a little too messy. I think the plot is kind of thin. As I said, I was kind of confused throughout, very stressed out, didn't know like 90% of the characters' names. So there was too much disconnect from like the viewer to the characters, I think, which, as you guys said before, it made it hard to care about what was happening to them. Kind of in essence, it just made me think of like a very intricate nightmare, which, isn't a bad thing for a horror movie, but I think I would have to destroy it just because it was too hard to follow, and I don't want to be like concentrating that hard on just making sure that I understand what's happening for a movie.
Yeah, like after I watched it, and Courtney, my girlfriend, caught the end of it, and she's like, "What the fuck is going on?" And then she's like read the entire like Wikipedia thing about it, like as it was ending. She's like, I still don't get it. Like, and I was like, yeah, I'm not surprised. This movie just makes no sense.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that seems to be the general consensus, because I was like getting worried. I was just like, I think I'm like supposed to be getting it, but I'm not getting it.
Yeah. Yeah, like so many times it teetered on like, okay, this is what's happening. This is where it's going. And then it would go, it'd like just do a 360.
Like in the
nope,
complete
we're going
opposite
this way
direction.
now. Yeah. check out for this subplot or this thing we never told you. And, yeah. With that being
What's behind door number 3?
yeah. Mhm. What's behind the door with the triangle on
That's
it?
what I want to know. Just
Guess
kidding,
what?
you know.
Don't go in there. That would have been my advice. But with that being said, I do destroy it, but I would recommend it. I mean, I don't think it's fantastic, but I'm a fan of the practical effects. So if you're into that, just to see what it looks like, I thought it looked cool. See it for that. I thought they did a good job, especially on the low budget, like really low budget. They had to stop production twice because producers pulled out of this $80,000 budget movie. And
Oh God.
I mean, it's all, the whole money is in the prosthetics and the makeup and the paint and all that stuff. That's where the money's at.
I think there's definitely like people will find enjoyment from this movie, and I think probably with people who aren't as familiar, that are just like looking for a movie that's different.
Mhm.
And this movie's different. It's different for sure because it's got like it. I would say in the beginning it's pretty cool because you're just like, man, I really want to know what's going on here, and maybe to a more casual viewer they'd be like more satisfied, but like I think I just seen too many movies that it is influenced by, and just like, and not doing anything to conclude it, which is why I like faulted it, because I was like, I know better movies that you're taking source material from, that you're just copying it because it looks cool, or at least influenced by, but you're not like concluding it for yourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, that's it for me.
All right. Well, everybody, that's it for today's episode of The Void. I hope you enjoyed it. Get on our website. We got one. We got a Twitter. We got a Facebook. We got on YouTube. So just leave us your comments. Let us know what you're thinking of the episodes. We'd love always to hear your feedback, as well as maybe things you'd like us to talk about more, mini episode topics, ideas, what movies you want the gang to talk about. We're always interested in what you have to say. But that's all I got. And until next time, you know where I'll be. I'll be in the shadows.
I'm Peter, and I guess I'll always be in the void, but an upside down.
Good night, y'all.